welcome to my channel, Haylee Marie Vintage. Today I have a super fun 1940s, I believe, sewing project for you. So here we have companion Butterick 8935. I believe it's 40s because of the styling. I don't actually have a copyright date on this, but I think this pattern is really, really pretty. And a while ago, I took a poll from y'all on Instagram. If you want to participate in polls, definitely follow me there. That's where I do most of them. About which fabric to use, and I had it down between a pink and a blue crepe, and people voted for the blue. This is just a blue crepe polyester probably that I picked up from a thrift store at some point, so I'm planning on making it out of that. And then diving in and finding some lace to pair it with, which I'm excited to finally start using some of those trims from that dressmaking factory. First steps here is going to be to cut this pattern out. It's a really interesting pattern because it has like the side and upper collar pieces somewhat in one on like the back and the front. I don't know, it's kind of a really weird looking pattern, so I'm excited to give it a try. I sew a little less from the 40s than I do from the 50s, so it's always a new experience when I do sew from this. What's really also interesting about this pattern is it doesn't use buttons, despite the fact it looks like it's button up. It is a side zip, which is not always my favorite in a garment, but that's okay. It's also funny, I wonder if there are counterfeit patterns, because this pattern has a fashion fresh. We hereby certify that the style is a current fashion, which I guess is not a counterfeit thing, but that would be more like a, we promise this is current fashion and not something from the 30s, God forbid. I don't have very many Butterick with the packaging like this, so I always think it's kind of funny when I do. So let's go ahead and dive into the cutting stage. This project will be taking place in my parents' basement, so we will be all of a sudden transported from lovely Seattle, Washington to Denver, Colorado into a basement. We are gonna hop into that now. All right, so I am on day one. Very exciting. So I'm in my parents' basement on the wood floor. I didn't sweep before I did this, and I got a bunch of dust all over this fabric, which was really fun to then try to get off. But I do now have everything ironed, everything laid out, good to go, ready to move. So with this, I have pinned everything down. I've just decided to refuse to let a fabric intimidate me. This was a very shifty and annoying fabric to cut, and it took time, and then I forgot to bring my shears, and my mom's shears squeak or click weird. I don't know how to explain it, but they aren't great. And so I just kind of had to persevere through all of it, but I've decided, yeah, I'm not going to let a fabric intimidate me, and I didn't let this fabric intimidate me, and I got it done. Everything's not straight or even or perfect, but it's good enough, so I am continuing along past the cutting phase. We are on day 2 of this project. I have left all of my pieces to hang for a couple days, so I guess in theory we're on day 4 or 5, but for the purpose of actually working on this project, we are on day 2. So I did hang up my pieces to have them stretch out for bias. I saw in somebody's YouTube video, I wish I could credit them, but I can't, that you should actually hang pieces that were cut slightly on the bias to have them stretch beforehand, so then your garment doesn't stretch as much after and end up with kind of that uneven, droopy, weird hem thing that sometimes happens. So I decided to give it a go, and I did find a couple of my pieces where stuff had stretched differently in others, and so then I just real quick cut off those edges. This was kind of a neat new trick, and I definitely have noticed the difference in my dress now that I've had it hanging for a while, because the seams aren't starting to droop or become uneven. So just kind of a cool little neat trick that I learned somewhere and added to my sewing repertoire. And yes, in case you're wondering, these are a literal bag of marbles I am using as pattern weights, because when you don't have, you make do. Here I am pinning to work to get all the different pieces of the dress together. I have folded over the top, which in retrospect I should have done second after I sewed. I didn't read the instructions well enough. But it's okay. It didn't ruin everything. It just wasn't great. And then I also was getting together the other front panels, and then also trying to get all the back panels together so I can slowly get everything together so I can sew the back to the front. And here I am now winding my bobbin, threading my machine, all that fun jazz that's important to sewing. And then I am sewing all those pieces I just pinned together. I do really enjoy sewing these longer seams. I find it kind of fun and relaxing. And then because I got intimidated by the French seams, I decided to pink these seams. So I'm just going through with my pinking shears, and then I'm pressing the seam open like normal. The pinking worked okay actually on this crepe. It's not too, the crepe itself is crumbly, so it was kind of annoying to clean up after pinking it. but it's not like a particularly like fraying type of crepe, so it worked out okay. These are my mom's pinking shears, and I actually think I maybe like these more than the ones I own. So even though I don't like her regular shears as much, I do like these pinking shears. And here I am doing the really satisfying gathering of the bodice to then top stitch this folded edge down to make everything work the way it's supposed to. This was a very fun step. I enjoyed it. And like always, I did 3 rows of basting stitches and then pulled those. I do all of my gathering with machine basting stitches. I just don't have the patience for running stitches, and I don't feel like I can get gathers as even as I can if I do it by machine. So that is how I got these gathers all prepped, and then kind of trying to figure out how the clipping worked and all that jazz was not the funnest because you're supposed to like clip the corners, and I don't think I did a great job figuring that out, but that's all right. And then here I am just top stitching that down. I top stitched nice and slowly just to try to like keep everything going well and working well and doing what it should. Did like get too far from the edge on one of these, so then I had to pick it out and re-top stitch it to make it look nice. Half of sewing, they always say, is unpicking and re-sewing, and that was definitely true for this dress here. And then under that kind of V shape, I am now pinning the like sides of the V's together. I don't quite know how to explain this particularly well, so I'll probably just throw on a diagram or something like that onto this. But what you can't tell right now is I've just made a horrible mistake that is going to cost me quite a bit of time. Here I'm displaying my mistake. As you can see, I have one side stitched completely on the wrong side. So I am going to have to unpick it, and my thread matched so clearly. This was a really hard unpicking job, and crepe is also not the best to unpick on. Here it is now actually sewn properly. You can now see everything's where it should be, and it's looking pretty good. So it all turned out okay, but could fix it, but it wasn't very fun. Now here you can just see me prepping and pinning to sew the top shoulder seams and then the side seams of this garment together. We're getting close to a point where I can actually try it on. And now I am just, watching Housewives and sewing this, and we are getting it done. All right, I just wanted to show you guys this on. So obviously it still doesn't have sleeves, doesn't have collar, doesn't have zipper, it's just pinned on the side here. But I do like how it is turning out. I do feel like it maybe makes it look a little droopy here, but I'm gonna see if the sleeves maybe help that out, like help kind of pull this up and back. I don't know. But it does look really pretty. I think like in future iterations I need to shorten the bust length or wear like a more padded bra or something with it. But it is turning out, so now my last step with the main dress is just to hem it, so I'm gonna do that. But it's coming along great. I love gathered dresses here, so super excited. And we are now kicking off day 3, but before we do that, I just want to talk about some alterations I made. I decided I was worried about the droopy bust, so I went ahead and I angled some extra fabric off the top of the shoulder to bring up the middle of the bust, which is what I felt really looked droopy. As a result, so I could actually fit my head through, I needed to then lower the neckline in the front where the collar meets the front of the bust. So I went ahead and did those yesterday, and now today we are mainly focused on adding trim in the collar and the sleeves. And here I have a finished sleeve, and so I wanted to show you this process. I used a bias tape and a trim. This took a little bit of mental math sort of thing to figure out exactly what I was doing to get the trim on the sleeve to look the way I wanted. So here I am at my machine. My first step is to actually stitch the trim. I am basically stitching the trim up, pointing towards the shoulder. And then after I have very, very slowly basted this on, I am then putting my bias tape over where I just basted it, and then I am top stitching that down, and I just used a single fold bias tape, and then I will flip this up into the sleeve, the bias tape, which then makes the trim point down. And I am then just hand stitching that bias tape down with a whip stitch. One thing I really appreciated about this pattern is I felt like it gave me good instructions on how to add trim to the collar. I was actually pretty nervous about adding the trim to the collar because I didn't know what I was doing and I hadn't done this before, and I really, really wanted it to look nice. So what I am doing here is It told me to fold and iron it folded down actually for both sides, because then what we're going to do is actually baste the trim onto the inside of that. So like basically you have the flap and you're basting the trim onto that flap. So I had to measure my trim to figure out how much I wanted to have, because I was just going to do this all on the machine. And the first thing I'm doing is I am basting the trim to the inside, one of the collar pieces. And then after I have that all basted in, which I moved really, really slow, it's not perfect, but it's good enough for my first go. After that was basted on, what I did was I then sandwiched the trim side in between the other, side that was also folded down, and then I just top stitched that down, and then I chose which side looked best to face up, and then I completed adding the collar to the dress completely off camera. And I also left the zipper off camera because I actually forgot to bring a closure, which was really frustrating. I really wanted to film this whole thing at my parents' house, and because I forgot my zippers, I actually wasn't able to do that, which I'm still super bummed about. So I took this dress back to Seattle and I put in the zipper, and then now we are ready for the reveal. All right, we have wrapped it up. You have now seen the reveal. So let's kind of talk through how I feel about this project. As I sit on it. Okay, there we go. So this is the dress. I think this dress is so stinking cute. There are some adjustments I will make the second round that I make this dress someday. So because this collar is 2 pieces, I actually think I could put a zipper up the back, which is always preferable to the little side zip on here. And then the other thing is, fit-wise, the arms are just a smidge too tight, which is how all of these are. I really need to basically learn how to extend the arms by about 1 inch, just so things are a little bit more comfortable and have a little bit more room to breathe. And then the last thing is, as always, the length. I had to cut, I think 8 inches off the bottom of this dress to have it hit where I want, which is pretty typical, but I don't like to make that decision until I've at least made one version. And then the other adjustment I made, you guys saw, which was basically bringing this whole bust part up, so that way it didn't look like my boobs were at my stomach. So yeah, that's the fit issues that I had and I would fix in the future. This crepe fabric, I had a hard time getting the hem to not have any weird, there's kind of some weird foldy bits happening here. I don't know how well you'll be able to see them. I'm trying to find a good patch of them, because there's definitely points that are worse than others. Here, I can't quite figure out what's going on here. It's folded in where the hem is stitched down. I'm actually going to try to steam it and see if that fixes the issue. And the other sewing flaw I would say is around some of the trim. You can see the basting stitches, but if I pulled out the basting stitches, the trim would come off. So I'm not going to do that. For learning things, like I said, I don't work with crepe that often. It's been a while since I've worked with crepe, and this is probably the most tailored dress I've made out of crepe. And the other funny thing actually about this pattern is the bows actually perfectly cover my mistakes. So I didn't quite get this to lay the way I wanted here in the front. And it's perfect because the pattern had you put a bow there, and then I also, on the point of this, is it just a little bit not great looking. And so I'm actually pretty pleased to have the pattern have me putting bows there, so it's not my problem. The last thing I did is I did make the belt that goes with this, but I hate how it looks with it, so I'm not going to use it or keep it. I'm pretty proud of this dress and I'm very happy with it, and I think it's really cute. I'm hoping my arms don't outgrow it. That's my biggest worry right now, but I'm pretty pleased because since it's a solid color, I have a navy bias tape everywhere, up here in the collar and down at the hem. So it's pretty neat because I feel everything matches. I feel this is such a cute 1940s dress. And the other thing is I have an extra inch or so in the waist if I need to take this out for a really big dinner. So I'm pretty pleased about that as well. And I think that kind of concludes the wrap up on this dress. Like I said, I'm really proud of this. I learned a few new things. This whole pattern itself was just kind of new and honestly really intimidated me. And I think I sewed it in a really, really nice way. And I'm really proud of it. That's, I think, all I have to say. And I guess I also have to say, like, go and make the pattern that scares you. This pattern scared me, and reading the instructions felt confusing, but when I was in it and I was doing it, I felt fairly confident and I felt like I knew what I was doing-ish. And anything that didn't work out perfectly, I just ripped out some stitches and did it again. I was gonna say no big deal, but as anyone who has ever sewn with a material like this, ripping stitches out of it really sucks, especially when your thread match is so good you can't tell the difference. Just go and try that pattern that really freaks you out. That is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I have lots of good sewing content coming up, as well as styling and thrifting, which is kind of what my channel is about. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely hit that subscribe button and stick around. I would love to have you, and I will see you next time. Bye!